There is a music that needs no introduction. It is a music you recognize from the very first notes. It is felt as if the Kazakh steppe itself comes alive. It unfolds in all its majesty and in its endless expanse. The sweep of wings, the vast embrace of the sky, and the fragrance of wild wormwood are all woven into this music. It carries the breath of life, the ecstasy of love, and the ache of longing. It stirs the soul with every emotion and awakens both smiles and tears. This is the mark of a musical genius. Only a great composer can create music that touches hearts and souls across the boundless passage of time.
Имя человека, создавшего эту бессмертную музыку, всем известно.
The name of the man who created this immortal music is known to all. It is Nurghisa Tlendiyev, a true son of the steppe. Born in the hardships of the 1920s, he endured together with his people every trial that fate imposed. From famine and repression to the war against fascist invaders, he witnessed it all. He saw the bitterness of loss and the triumph of victory. He saw the nation transformed as Kazakhstan gained its independence. And all of this he captured in his music, which itself has become a symbol of Kazakhstan. Tlendiyev did not merely play. He spoke to the dombra, and it answered him with music filled with light, sorrow, and love. He first held the dombra as a child, when it seemed immense and magical to him. Its wood carried the warmth of his father's touch, for it was his father who crafted and gave him that first instrument. In their home, music did not merely sound, it lived. His father taught him to hear not only the notes, but also the silence between them. The dombra is the heart of the steppe. If you love it, it will speak to you, he would say. And this gift came not from his father, but from his mother. An old piano, a rare treasure, became the true beginning of everything. Its worn keys and softened tone carried a world of their own. This was not only a gift, it was another doorway into the world of music. At the age of 4 or 5, he began composing his first melodies. As the years passed, the cities and even the eras changed, but the piano was always with him. He never parted from it and carried it with him wherever he moved. His mother always supported Nurghisa. She surrounded him with care, as if she knew that she had been given a special mission to bring into this world, to nurture and to preserve her son's unique talent. A defining role in the life of Nurghisa Tlendiyev was played by the great composer Ahmet Zhubanov. He entered Nurghisa's life when the boy was still very young. Ahmet Zhubanov recognized the gift of the young musician. He became not only a teacher, but also a true mentor and a close friend. He took Tlendiyev under his wing while leading the Kurmangazy State Orchestra of Folk Instruments. By the age of 12, Nurghisa had become the orchestra's concertmaster, and by 14, its conductor, an achievement that was extraordinary for those times. This is how Nurghisa Tlendiyev himself, along with his contemporaries, remembered those years.
Был 1934 год.
It was 1934. Composer Ahmet Zhubanov set out to create an orchestra. He searched for talented musicians, but at first, not even two could play together in harmony. Each musician brought his own favorite piece, and then the sound of Sararka by the great Kurmangazy arose. In Almaty, the young Nurghisa lived an active and eventful life. He studied, played in the orchestra, and was in touch with the leading figures of culture. This was a very happy time in his life. Zhubanov not only taught Tlendiyev the mastery of music, he passed on to him the philosophy of Kazakh music, helping him to grow as both a composer and as a person, and inspiring him to create on his own. With the deepest respect, Nurghisa Tlendiyev called him Koke. War. The news struck without mercy, sparing no one. In those days, every man was forced to decide who he would be in the face of calamity. Nurghisa could have remained in Almaty, a gifted young musician cherished and admired, but he could not compose while his homeland lay beneath gathering storm clouds. And so, with millions of his compatriots, he marched to war. He went as a volunteer, adding 2 years to his age in order to reach the front. Under fire, he still carried not only a weapon in his hands, but music in his heart. He played when fear made it hard to breathe. He wrote from the front lines to his teacher, Koke, and he gave his comrades solace through melodies that spoke of home, of life, and of the cause for which they fought. His memories of that terrible war still live on in the archives.
I took part in the liberation of Warsaw, of Poland, and of Czechoslovakia. I took part in the storming of Berlin. In 1945 I was wounded. Now, having lived to old age, I rejoice that I survived. And I treasure every single day. So many of my friends never lived to see this bright day. I lost a lot of them. I dedicated a song to Borjan Momshili. The song is called I Am Searching for You. It is about the friends we lost at the front. We're still searching for them, even now.
When he came home, he sought no glory, asked for no reward. He longed to live and to create. Once more, music became his breath. It was as though he were reclaiming the stolen years. And then he went to Moscow with his mother's support.
Когда он поступил в Московскую консерваторию и уехал, она вот эта вот простая...
When he left for the Moscow Conservatory for his study, it was his mother, a modest elderly woman of remarkable strength, who took my hand. I was not yet 8 years old. She would lead me by foot to Koyankus, a village nearly 20 kilometers from Almaty. Imagine the two of us walking those 20 kilometers, weary and hungry, until we reached relatives. We would eat, rest for the night, and the next day we went into the mountains where the famous Almaty apport apples grew. I still remember their taste to this day. We gathered them, filled the sacks, and when it was time to leave, our relatives gave us a two-wheeled cart. We loaded it high with sacks of apples, and my grandmother would harness herself to it, walking ahead, while I pushed the cart from behind. Having walked 20 kilometers again, we returned to Almaty late at night, unloaded the cart, and then Saliha Appa sold the apples at the market. She brought back the money, I saved it, and once enough was gathered, she sent it to Moscow so her son could live on it. It's hard to imagine. Even now when I think about it, as a grandmother myself, I marvel at the strength of spirit of my grandmother.
Представляете, я вот сейчас вот уже сама взрослая, сама уже бабушка, и я поражаюсь силе духа своей вот этой Апашки.
Post-war Moscow was a city weary yet proud, healing its wounds in the quiet of rebuilt streets and the clatter of trams. Amid the piles of brick and the rising concrete, the air still carried the memory of loss, yet already trembled with hope. Into this Moscow came the young Nurghisa Tlendiyev. In the city, every morning began with labor and every evening with music. Here he studied, taking everything in. The conservatory gave him knowledge, it gave him a stage, but above all, it recognized his music. The melodies born in the heart of the steppe took shape in this city.
Он же в Москве закончил по дирижированию Аносова, профессиональный дирижер.
He started conducting in Moscow under Anosov, a distinguished conductor and composer. His mastery of orchestration was exceptional for both the symphony orchestra and the folk orchestra. In time, he no longer needed an instrument. He would sit down and write directly into the score. While others checked their work at the piano, he wrote as effortlessly as if setting words to paper. I remember how often I relied on the instrument, checking again and again, and he said to me, "You have graduated from the conservatory twice. Why depend on the keyboard? Write with your mind. You are a theorist. Trust yourself." From then on, I learned to orchestrate without an instrument.
Upon his return to Almaty, the young composer immediately found himself at the heart of the Republic's musical life. His remarkable gift for melody and his ability to reach people through music made him a great figure of note. He worked first at the Kazakh State Academic Theater of Opera and Ballet and later at the Kazakh Radio Comedy, where he served as artistic director of the Orchestra of Kazakh Folk Instruments.
Музыка его тоже уникальна. В каком плане? Вот у нас есть оркестр казахских.
His music is unique. In what sense? We have the Kurmangazy Orchestra of Kazakh Folk Instruments, with a history that now spans almost a century, and today, across Kazakhstan, there are 18 such orchestras of Kazakh folk instruments. The fact that all 18 orchestras exist, I believe this is very much Tlendiyev's achievement. He was the turning point between the cues of Kurmangazy, Dina Nurghisa and others, and the music of today. Tlendiyev became the bridge between the traditions of the 19th century and modern compositions for the folk orchestra. Without his work, it is impossible to say what course the orchestras of Kazakh folk instruments might have taken. It was his creativity that transformed how we understand the orchestras of Kazakh folk instruments.
А именно его творчество поменяло вот этот взгляд на оркестр казахских народных инструментов.
The works he created are timeless. When you reflect on his legacy, you realize that the music left behind by such a great composer continues to accompany us every day, on the radio, on television, at weddings, even across social media. The cues of Nurghisa Tlendiyev are always played. From the heart, I can say, Nurghisa Tlendiyev is eternal. His music is eternal.
Вот я композитор, я студент, обучаюсь, работаю, тружусь. А он просто писал музыку, которая спускалась к нему.
As a composer, I studied, I worked, I applied myself. But he simply wrote music. It seemed to come to him from above. It was unique, extraordinary, a true gift. The music flowed freely, as if it rose straight from his heart and soul, from his very way of perceiving the world. I was astonished by his talent then, and that sense of awe has never left me.
Удивительно. И я был потрясен его талантом, его даром. И это потрясение у меня до сих пор.
He was the one who brought into music the spirit of Kazakh melody. That was his distinction. His very essence has always represented the Kazakh traditions in art, and I believe it would be difficult to find another like him.
Он очень национален, очень казах в музыке. Я думаю, что второго такого, наверное, трудно найти.
Вблизи заснеженных гор.
At the foot of the snow-covered mountains, Kazakh film studios emerge.
In the late 1960s, Kazakh film studios reached a creative high point, and at its musical heart was Nurghisa Tlendiyev. He was the composer who gave Kazakh cinema more than melody. He gave it the voice of an era, the breath of the steppe, and the spirit of Kazakh traditions.
Но вы знаете, он написал более чем 20 кинофильмов, музыку.
As you probably know, he has composed music for more than 20 films. I believe there is something in his work that cannot be put into words. What distinguished his work was that it was never just background. In most cinema, the score serves as illustration, a decorative layer behind the image. His music was different. It carried the drama forward, intensifying it or giving the audience space to reflect.
Она его или усиливает, или наоборот дает возможность человеку вдуматься, подумать, потому что
Take Zhibek. Without Tlendiyev's score, it would not be the film we know today, because at times music in cinema rises beyond the screen itself, and he was one of the rare composers whose work could transcend the film.
из всех композиторов, которые смог написать музыку, которая вышла за историю самого кино.
As chief music editor of the studio, Tlendiyev did more than write film scores. He created soundscapes where each cue, each theme, emerged as a character in its own right. His melodies seemed to weave into the frame, bringing images to life and stirring emotions beyond words. All of it became part of the magic of cinema. Zhibek, My Name is Kozha, Journey into Childhood, Alpamız Goes to School. Tlendiyev's music is an inseparable part of these films.
Varya! Varya!
Farewell, Alpamız.
Он был главным редактором на Казахфильме.
He served for many years as chief music editor at Kazakhfilm, shaping the studio's entire musical landscape. It was his responsibility not only to compose, but also to commission works from other composers, to listen carefully, to judge, and to decide. Every score had to pass through his filter, through his ear and his sense of what belonged on screen. For example, the music for Shock and Sher, Trans-Siberian Express, and the end of Ataman was not written by him personally. Yet even these scores bear his presence because he had reviewed and guided them, making sure they matched the film's spirit. That was his true gift as an editor. He could always find the composer best suited for the story. The one whose music would open the characters, reveal the emotions, and give life to the images on screen. And his own music was truly distinctive. In Zhibek, the score helped define the film. In the 1970s, it was regarded as unusually original. At the time, convention, largely set by Mosfilm, favored full symphony orchestras for film music. In Zhibek, the symphony is used only sparingly. Much of the music he performed himself, and he was an accomplished performer. It was in the 1970s that his name entered history, when he founded the legendary Otyrar Sazy folk ethnographic orchestra. It was his artistic manifesto, a return to the roots, a bold reimagining of ancient Kazakh music in a contemporary way. Tlendiyev brought together a remarkable team, reviving rare instruments such as the shirter, the shankobuz, and the asatayak. His music forged a bridge between past and present, between the nomadic wisdom and the rhythm of the modern city.
Был оркестр имени Курмангазы со своими устоявшимися традициями,
The Kurmangadze Orchestra had long stood with its own traditions and instruments, and then Tlendiyev created Otyrar Sazy. Into it, he introduced the saz-sirnai, an instrument written about in history, yet unseen until it was uncovered in the excavations at Otyrar. He revived the shankobuz as well. Among the Kazakhs, it had almost vanished, surviving only along the border with Kyrgyzstan, where it lived on in Kyrgyz tradition. By bringing these instruments in, he gave birth to a new vision of the Kazakh folk orchestra, a testament to the vastness of his imagination.
Новое видение оркестра казахских народных инструментов. Это тоже его великая фантазия.
Ну, знаете, как сказать, он был и строгим, и добрым. Ну, мы для него были детьми.
He was both strict and kind. To him, we were all like children. Everyone was equal in his eyes. Whether a driver, a stagehand, or someone from the wardrobe, he treated them all the same. He asked about everyone, cared about everyone. That was the kind of man he was. And he had a favorite expression, Altyn Bayım. We all remember it. He was always calling out with a smile, "Hey, Altyn Bayım, come here."
Every rehearsal was special. In the vast orchestra, he could detect the slightest false note.
It's all uneven, played together evenly. You're missing the third note.
Orchestra'nın bütün mendiyeti
First of all, every musician in the orchestra must command the instrument to perfection. Just as important, the orchestra must become a single whole, moving in complete unity. Every nuance matters, and I always demand that attention from each player. Every concert is the outcome of shared effort and of understanding one another almost without words.
Ну, вот, например, его же современники над ним всегда подшучивали, говорили, ой.
His contemporaries often teased him, saying that Tlendiyev conducted with his ears. He was a little large-eared, and in truth, he did conduct with them, because those ears could hear everything. For a musician, sharp hearing comes above all else, and even the slightest false note was unbearable to him. That is why Otyrar Sazy, under his direction, rose to such heights, because the orchestra played with absolute clarity.
Следили за его руками каждый раз вот месяц.
We watched his hands constantly, even when he played the same piece, Mahambet, for example. He would conduct it differently each time. One day his hands moved one way, the next day in another. That is why all our eyes were fixed on his hands. His gestures were music to us. The way his fingers shaped the air, it was something beyond words. He could bring the music to a close with the smallest movement. A tilt of the head, a glance ending in a whisper of piano one day, then finishing the very same piece in a ringing chord the next. It all flowed from his inspiration, from the mood that carried him in that moment.
От его вдохновения, или как это называется там, его настроение.
His music filled films, theaters, and television, and lived on in the hearts of millions. Among his greatest works stands the symphonic poem Ata Tolg'auы, a masterpiece of epic power of traditions. Despite his undeniable talent, Nurghisa Tlendiyev faced difficult trials. His music spoke with honesty and depth, and it was precisely that sincerity which stirred envy among those unable to grasp the simplicity and strength of his gift. Professional musicians, schooled in rigid forms and complex schemes, sometimes dismissed him, even denying him entry into the Union of Composers.
Вы знаете, вообще любому творческому человеку очень трудно пережить чужой успех.
For any creative person, it is never easy to live with someone else's success. Every musician, every artist tends to see himself as a great talent. If not a genius, then at least someone deserving of recognition. It is especially hard when success comes with a title. One is admitted to the Union of Composers, while another is not. One is named People's Artist, while another is left out.
Ты не член. Вот ты народный артист, а ты не народный артист.
I always wondered, why did he seem so stern? What was wrong? I would ask Dariga again and again, and she would always tell me, "You have no idea. He's having troubles at work." All doubts were laid to rest when Tikhon Khrennikov, chairman of the Union of Soviet Composers, expressed to Nurghisa his admiration and respect.
In those days, Tikhon Khrennikov, together with leading composers from Moscow and across the Soviet Union, attended the concert of Otyrar Sazy, and Tikhon Khrennikov, deeply impressed, declared in his congratulations to Tlendiyev, "What an orchestra, what melody, a true revelation."
Tlendiyev never chased acclaim. His music rose above envy and intrigue, reaching straight to the human soul. It stirred feelings that words could never capture, and his legacy endures as proof that talent, joined with love for one's art, can overcome every obstacle.
Ал енді қызғаншақтық деген мына өнер азаматтардың арасында бір жаман әдет бар. Қызғаншақтың қыз дейтін мені.
Yes, envy is a bitter flaw among artists. Some so-called professionals looked down on him because they had studied at the conservatory. There were those who envied Nurghisa, yet he prevailed through his art.
Өздерін жоғары санайтындар өте көп болды. Нұрғисаны көрмейтіндер де көп болды. Бірақ Нұрғиса бәрін жеңді. Ол қайтып жеңді.
Let me tell you a story without naming names. There was a man who disliked him. At one concert, when Tlendiyev took the podium to conduct the Kurmanghazı orchestra, the audience refused to let him step away. That man sat in the audience seething. This isn't even Tlendiyev's evening. Why won't he leave the stage?
Алматыға келіп сол концертке қатыстым. Қазіргі Құрманғазы атындағы оркестрдің залында қазақ концерт.
But the crowd called him back again and again. So Nurghisa Tlendiyev gave 2, even 3 encores. And then he came down, kissed that man on both cheeks and laughed. The man could only murmur, "What can I say? Nurghisa is Nurghisa."
Nurghисаның бүгін авторлық кешімі сияқты шықпады деді. Бірақ тұраған тағы да 2-3 шығармадан кейін келіп.
Even his rivals, for all their envy, could not help but recognize him and bow to his greatness.
Нұрекеңнің аты Нұрекең дейді. Оның жаулары да Нұрағаңды қызғанатын. Нұрағаңның алдында әр уақытта басын иіп тұратын.
Tlendiyev met it all with calm and restraint, for the love of the people was more than enough for him. Wherever he went, in the concert halls of Moscow, in the studios of Kazakh film, or in the smallest of villages, he was welcomed as one of their own. People saw in him a keeper of ancestral songs, a man who could, with a single chord, speak to the soul of an entire nation. Tlendiyev became more than famous. He became a legend in his own lifetime. They called him the Kazakh Beethoven, yet he remained humble.
Archival tartatığın Nurghisa.
Вот у него произведение Нурghisa, его удивительное, он нашел форму, удивительное соединение соло-домбры с оркестром.
In Nurghisa, he created a striking way of bringing the dombra together with the orchestra. You know, when you listen to that piece, the way he plays is very unique. In doing so, he opened a path that later composers would also follow. But it was Nurghisa who led the way.
И он, надо сказать, что
I must say, it is a level that perhaps no one else will ever reach. The way he presented the music was extraordinary. In a single performance, he could shift from a soloist to a conductor, then become part of the orchestra, and then step forward again as its soloist. It was nothing short of astonishing.
At times, friendship can sound like music. It asks for no loud declarations. It lives in tone and silence, in a glance, a gesture, an unspoken accord. Such was the bond between Nurghisa Tlendiyev and Muqagali Makataev, composer and poet, 2 undeniable geniuses.
В этом доме они жили около месяца были.
They lived in this house for about a month. and in those 30 days they wrote nearly 30 songs. Tlendiyev was older, Makataev younger, yet their collaboration was remarkably close. In just 1 month they created Sarı Jaylau, Ajimi, Kelierkem Alataunga, and many others, all set to the poetry of Muqagali Makataev.
In March 1976, Tlendiyev received devastating news that Muqagali had died. He passed quietly, yet with a thunderous echo in the heart of his friend. Nurghisa could not believe it. He kept a note handed to him just days before the tragedy. Muqagali wrote, "Aha, it's me. My illness is worsening." In it was a verse left like a testament. "Remember me." And he did, for the rest of his life. When Nurghisa Tlendiyev learned that Muqagali had passed away, it was a profound shock for him. He somehow believed that Muqagali would always be there, you see. He loved him so deeply. The grief overwhelmed him. You could see it in everything. He withdrew into himself. For days we could not talk to him, could not even see him. He hid away, hardly came home, and when he did, he would shut himself in his study and never come out. He even stopped eating. Dariga and I pleaded with him, "Please, have something to eat, at least a cup of tea," but he would not. Tlendiyev's grief was so profound, it brought him to a hospital bed. Months of silence, inner struggle, and emptiness took a toll on him. No songs were written. It was as if his music had fallen silent with the passing of Makataev. Nurghisa Tlendiyev's life was filled with many sounds, from the rumble of war to the fragile whisper of the dombra's strings. Yet, the deepest chord that ever resonated within him was love. By then, he was already a mature man, celebrated and cherished by his people. And then he met Dariga. She entered his life as inspiration does, unannounced, yet precisely when it was meant to arrive.
Очень любили его женщины. Почему-то, вот знаете, ну, так сказать, что красавец он.
Women adored him very much. You know, not because he was strikingly handsome. Actually, he wasn't, not in the usual sense. There was something unusual about him, something hard to define, and yet women loved him passionately. After an opera or performances, the ballerinas and female singers would crowd around him, asking, "Nurghisa, where are we going tonight?" He dated many women over the years, but in the end, there was only one woman he cared about, Dariga. He was 40, she was 21. When they met and married, despite the 19-year gap between them, he loved her deeply, and you know, he never allowed anyone to speak ill of her. If relatives ever tried to, he silenced these conversations immediately. Dariga was utterly devoted to him and to his music.
Вот. А Dariga была вообще, она настолько была предана ему, предана музыке.
When their daughter Dinjukhra was born, Nurghisa was past 60. He devoted every free moment to her, nurturing in her a love for music.
Его вот это трудолюбие, его любовь к музыке, вот, наверное, оно...
His devotion to work, his love for music, that is what I witnessed from childhood, what I absorbed, and what continues to guide me. Perhaps his greatest lesson was to be honest. He always said that music does not tolerate falsehood. He could not endure falseness, both in music and human relationships.
И в жизни. Он не терпел фальши не только в музыке, но и в взаимоотношениях.
In this archival video, as he plays melodies for little Dinjukhra, his thoughts drift back to his own childhood and to his father, a man who longed for a daughter but was blessed with a son.
My father already had 2 sons, and he dreamed of a daughter. When I was born prematurely, At just 7 months, one of the women ran to tell him the news. Perhaps not wanting to disappoint him, she said, "It's a girl." He mounted his horse and rushed to my mother. Taking me in his arms, he lifted me high in the soft light of dawn and declared with joy, "Let my daughter's name be Nurghisa." It was a girl's name. Then someone standing nearby whispered, "Look closely. This is not a girl, but a boy." My father was taken aback, yet he never changed the name. He simply waved it aside, saying that since he had named me Nurghisa, the name would stay, and that is how I came to be Nurghisa.
In this very kitchen, he loved to linger over tea with his wife. She was the first to hear his new compositions, and many of them were written for her. Könülde bikesh, ak kısım, kuya bol. They were more than music. They were declarations of love set to sound. He was a man of boundless kindness. He helped many without seeking gratitude, without expecting recognition. His help was quiet, but genuine. Among those he once supported was Shamshir Khaldayakov, a great composer who had found himself at a difficult crossroads in life. For reasons I never fully understood, something to do with his family perhaps, Shamshir Khaldayakov found himself living in a Roma camp. He stayed there for a time, and during those days he wrote what later became his famous Gypsy Serenade. I later learned from Dariga that when Nurghisa Tlendiyev discovered his situation, he went there and brought Khaldayakov out. He took him home, made sure he was cared for, and arranged for him to be admitted to hospital, where he could finally recover. Khaldayakov had also lost his apartment. Nurghisa Tlendiyev secured a place for him to live, helped him find work, and set him back on his feet. Nurghisa Tlendiyev never turned away from musicians in need. Whenever he recognized true talent, he made it his duty to support and help young artists continue their studies, to nurture their growth, and to ensure they had the chance to carry their music forward. Nurghisa Tlendiyev himself remained strong until the very end. When he learned he had cancer, he chose to remain silent. He endured the pain and refused to show weakness. He did not want to be pitied. He continued to create up to his final day.
Папа перед смертью очень долго лежал в больнице, это примерно год. И на протяжении всего этого времени...
Before he passed away, my father spent nearly a year in the hospital. But even there, he continued to work. He was not simply confined to a bed. In that time, he composed his final 7 pieces. Each morning, before my mother took me to school, we would first go to visit him. He would embrace me, we would greet each other, and he would give me his blessing. Only then would my mother drive me on to school.
Также после школы. И однажды приезжаем к отцу, и он был в потрясающем настроении, радовался как ребенок, а потом...
I remember one visit especially well. He was in good spirits that day. He told me, "Today I listened to the orchestra play my music. What a brilliant orchestra! How wonderful it sounded!" I still remember his joy. For him, each composition was like a child of his own.
Я помню его эту радость. То есть его произведение — это его как ребенок.
Nurghisa Tlendiyev passed away at the age of 71. He still had so much more to give, yet even what he left behind already belongs to eternity. He was laid to rest beside the man he revered as his spiritual teacher and idol, Zhambul Zhabayeva. It felt as though great poetry and great music had been reunited, this time for all eternity. And yet, Tlendiyev did not disappear. He lives on through music that heals and through music that saves.
Поэтому, если нашим молодым композиторам есть чему у него поучиться, конечно, тому, что он жил в музыке.
If there is one lesson young composers can take from him, it is that he seemed to live inside music itself. As a composer, I know how often the work means hours of effort, of searching and struggling to find the right tune. But with him, it was different. He belonged to music. His talent showed itself instantly. Everything appeared effortless, as though the music simply flowed from him. He let every note pass through his heart and soul, through his worldview. Without that, true artistry is impossible, and he had it in abundance. I'm reminded of what Tchaikovsky once said. When asked, "Mr. Tchaikovsky, when do you write music?" he replied, "Always." The same was true of Tlendiyev. Music lived in him constantly, and he lived in music. He was an extraordinary composer.
Nurghisa Tlendiyev's legacy did not end with his life. Today, his daughter, Dinjukhra, carries it forward. She now stands at the helm of the Otyrar Sazy Folk Instruments Orchestra, where under her leadership, the ensemble had gained a renewed vitality.
Ну, я прекрасно осознаю, насколько это важно, насколько это ответственно. И также, насколько это...
I fully realize how important this responsibility is and how demanding it can be. I have been leading the orchestra since 2009, and the path has not always been easy. There were difficult moments along the way, but what matters most is that people still love and remember my father, and they remember his music. Every time we perform, we can feel it in the applause, in the voices from the audience calling out for Kustarane or Al-Hissa.
Выкрики народа, что они хотят услышать Kustarane, Al-Hissa. Наверное, моя основная цель — сохранить то, что сейчас.
For me, the central mission is to preserve what we have, to treat it with respect, and at the same time to pass it on to the younger generation in a language they can understand. Folklore and classical traditions are not always easy for modern audiences, but when we translate them into a more contemporary form, they become accessible. We have been experimenting with this for several years now, and it is extraordinary to see how much young people respond to it. And the change is unmistakable.
И вообще, если брать, какой контингент приходил там 15 лет назад,
15 years ago, our concerts were attended mainly by older listeners. Today, the audience is younger, filled with young people, even with visitors from abroad. That is the true measure of how alive this music remains.
Приходит молодежь, приходят иностранцы.
In 2025, on the centenary of the composer's birth, UNESCO headquarters opened its door to an exhibition honoring his legacy. Visitors from every corner of the globe discovered more than 60 rare treasures: photographs, manuscripts, scores, personal belongings, and the legendary dariga, the dombra that never left the maestro's side throughout his creative life. Within those halls, the spirit of the Kazakh steppe came alive once more. The exhibition was not only a tribute to his memory, but also a vivid reminder that music is a truly universal language. Nurghisa Tlendiyev embraced life to the fullest. He loved with passion and composed with a depth of soul that could be heard in every note. In his music, he wove his devotion to his homeland, his people, and their history. That is why his works remain alive today. They have not aged because they speak from heart to heart. His music carries an unshakable fidelity and a profound wisdom about life. His legacy is more than remembrance. It is a priceless gift destined to endure through the ages.